Hi, I'm Babajide Duroshola and I'm on people.
Welcome to our debut episode of On People, a podcast on people at work.
Here, we dive into stories, insights, and learnings from the forefront of Africa's work scene.
My name is Toun, and I'm here with my co-host Aniema.
We've come a long way, Tom, from visualizing this, and we're finally here.
Exactly. Our first guest is a good one. You'll find him at the intersection of startups, scale-ups, and technology. He's passionate about building, setting up, and scaling African startups. He's currently the GM of M-Kopa Nigeria, but he has experience in HR consulting, core HR, community management, and general management, having worked in companies like Safe Border, Andela, Access Bank, and Philips Consulting. We bring you, drumroll, Babajide Duroshola. Hi, Babajide.
Hi guys, thank you for having me.
Awesome. We're glad you are here today. We're glad you're the first guest, actually. So today we'll be talking through your work journey and picking your brain. There's also an agony uncle advice style at the end from one of our community members. So you just have to answer one question only. But our first question today is, just going through your journey, I noticed that you've transitioned a couple of times. You're taking some unexpected turns. I knew you when you were in Andela. That was the first time I was introduced to you, and then you moved into general management. What triggered all these turns, and how have you adapted and succeeded, because you've made a name for yourself in the different industries and different roles that you have been in?
Sure. So first of all, I studied engineering. Long story on how I studied engineering, but I realized I wasn't an engineer, and so I needed something different. I love people, and HR was the next best thing. So spend time in HR, spend time with Philips Consulting, doing human capital management, doing HR strategy, HR transformation, recruitment. Then moved into Access Bank because I needed more money. And so many people don't, they ask, why the move? But it was really particularly about money and increasing my income. And then spent about 3 years there doing human resource business partnering, HR transformation too as well, and then recruitment. And then I used to mentor someone off Twitter. So that's why I usually say it's not just social media. And the person at that time was like, hey, I work at Andela and we're looking for a recruitment manager. So I applied for the role, went through the interview process, and was waiting for an offer, but the offer never came. And then they came back with, hey, we've changed the scope of the role. We're not looking for an HR manager, HR or recruitment manager anymore. We're now looking for a community manager. So someone who had a broader skill set around building technology communities, university recruitment, engagement, understanding of marketing, all that. And so thankfully at that time I was married and my wife was in marketing group. So I could draw from her knowledge of marketing. I did computer engineering in university. I've done HR, I've done, university campus recruitments and things like that. So I just picked all the skills that they felt they needed and then put it together and said, hey, here's why I'm still the guy for this job. And I went through another set of interviews and then finally got the job with Andela. So that's how I transitioned from HR into community manager. And at that time, there were very few community managers on the continent. And so it was easy to define what a community manager was. Like you looked at who were the community managers then. It was Guy at Google, and it was one other person. And so we came in, defined what community management should look like. It was a lot of trial and error.
Of course.
And then just, thinking around how do you represent the brand of the company in the different communities that you'll be talking to. So whether it is the government community, private sector, the student community, the developer community, like what do you want them to think about that company? And so that was how the community management went. And how did I get into general management? Very interesting. It's still the same thing of like the opportunity presented itself. And for me, I believe in when people say, you've been lucky all through your life. I said, no, it's mostly preparation meeting opportunities. So I'm constantly preparing. I don't know what I'm preparing for. I'm just preparing. And when the opportunity comes, I'm able to seize it. And so the opportunity to become a country manager came up. And they were looking for someone who had experience in marketing, someone who had built like a community, because it was motorcycle riders and they wanted us to build a community around motorcycle riders. So I just took the skill sets from the community manager into that part. I didn't know anything about finance, so that was the next learning part of like, the profit and loss side of the business and how to do that. HR, I've been doing recruitment for the longest, so I knew how to build a team, how to set up like proper performance management structures, how to set up like a team structure to succeed. So took that skill set into that too as well. And then, I think that's why I'm still a GM today. And I think I've kind of found where I want to be for the long term. So maybe one day work my way up to like a hired CEO, because not really interested in like starting off my own thing.
Just yet. But I love it. As you were speaking, I could hear transferable skills. Mm-hmm. So even though you were saying it was opportunity meeting preparation, somewhere on the, like just at the bottom, your skills, you were defining your skills and you were recognizing what skills could move from one industry or one role to another, which is very key. Yeah. Fantastic.
Yeah, just listening to your continuum, some people will think that, okay, when you start on a new role, you're totally green on it and, but it's just good to see how you were taking skills from one and moving it to the other. But, talking about it now, what would you say is your most defining moment in your work journey so far?
I would say it's how I responded to disappointments. Many people don't necessarily understand that the response to disappointment, especially within workplaces, work expectations, like you're dealing with human beings and human beings will disappoint you. When people make promises, they say, oh, do this and I'll give you this. And what they say, I will give you never really materializes. But how do you respond to that disappointment? Most times you see people just become disgruntled, disconnected, and they're just out of it. But, I never really, even when I was angry, I wasn't bitter. And that's where the difference really like occurs. That bitterness is like a poison oak. Everything just goes sour and it starts to affect your performance and your work. Every time in my career, I was disappointed about something, whether it was a promotion, whether it was like a salary increase, a role change, whatever it is, and it never came. I did not sulk around the office. I kept on doing my work, kept on putting in the best. You get to the point where people come to ask you, are you sure you're okay? Or like, you're angry about the situation, but you're not bitter. You don't look at it like, oh, this is my enemy. I don't like this person. And so for me, that ability to handle those disappointments always turned out to be how I even got the next role. There's the part where I didn't tell you that the way I got into general management was because someone saw what transpired between a promotion that never happened and said, I think you're better than the role you're doing now. So try and apply for this company. And that's how they sent me the same for that job. It was from them just being on the sideline, watching what had happened in that situation. Imagine if I had gotten that promotion, they would never had sent me that. They would have been like, it's okay.
It's okay.
And that was the income that kind of like transformed my earning capacity. And the promotion was what? 10% increase. So,
Yeah.
so that was a promotion that was going to give me 10% increase. It wasn't the money. It was really around the title. And that was where the disappointment really came in. But that came out, and then you get a job that gives you 4 times what you were earning. You're like, yeah, the promotion can go and sit down.
Take several sips, actually.
A lot.
So I take from what you've just said now that you have experienced several defining moments.
Yes.
All of them laced with disappointment.
Yep.
Who would have thought, really?
Yeah.
Okay, so moving on to the next question, I sort of get a sense that something that's fundamental and that you have mentioned so far is the human resource management skills.
Mhm.
Because I just heard you say people will disappoint you, right? So, but tell us still, what do you think the skill is that has gotten you so far? If you were to, out of your skill bucket, pick up one and say, this is the skill to go for, which one would you pick?
Many people would think it's, the human resource, or maybe you're a strategist, or everybody likes those fancy buzzwords. But truth of the matter is the ability to own things. And so every time I'd walked in a place, I had displayed a level of ownership that, in fact, when I was leaving Safe Border, people thought I had sold the company, because the way I carried the company on my head, they did not know I was an employee, and that someone hired me to do a job. And they're like, so you've exited, you made a lot of money. I'm like, no, I actually resigned. And they're like, you resigned from your own company. I'm like, what's my company? If you Google the company, you'll see the founders there. It's that level of ownership. The fact that you look at someone else's thing and say, you know what, if it were mine, how would I treat it? And that is something that I do everywhere in like all the jobs that I've had. I've always been a self-starter. I'm not the kind of person that you need to tell, hey, Babajide, you need to do 1, 2, 3, or you need to get up, or this, like that. I take feedback very well. Like, I don't see it as something that is negative. In fact, my managers will tell you I don't even know how to receive positive feedback. And that is a thing. Like, I become embarrassed when people are saying, oh, you're doing a good job. Like,
Wow.
I'm like, okay, what am I supposed to do?
People are very different.
But if you tell me that, oh, you're not doing 1, 2, 3 right, I would, okay, tell me, what do you want me to see? Like, my excitement starts to go. And it's a crazy part, but it still goes down to that ownership. The fact that you see someone else's thing, you see someone else's business, and you're like, I will run it the way I'm going to run my business. And I think across all my performance reviews, sometimes you don't know the skill sets that you would say is your biggest strength.
Mm-hmm.
I used to think maybe it was my way with people, things like that. But then when I look at all my performance reviews, ownership actually cuts across multiple organizations, multiple managers. Say his ability to take something and own it end to end. And so for me, if I'm going to bottle anything, it's that ownership.
Wow.
And it is actually what's bottling. It's what's flagging, because it's really lacking around here. But thank you for sharing that.
Thank you so much. I love the fact that it's almost like you're saying ownership got me this far. Really. In listening to you, it's the next point, or the next thing I want us to tackle is, what do you look out for when you're hiring? You've mentioned a few things that are already you. So ownership, treating things like they're yours from end to end. But I've also seen you talk a lot about, the learning mindsets.
Yeah.
So are those the two things that I'm not giving your people who apply to your company sort of expo, but are those the major two things you look out for, or are there other things that you look out for?
Yeah. So I do have a bucket of things that I look out for when I'm hiring.
Let us in, please.
Yeah. So ownership is one. I look for learning mindset. And so prior to coming to this podcast, I was talking to my direct reports, and we're talking about hiring and hiring skills and all that stuff. And we're talking about how to build case studies. And so I made a joke and I said, hey, did you think it was the nonsense you presented during your own case study that got you here? It was the ability to show that you could learn and you could see. Like, we gave you a real problem that we were facing. You brought solutions, but those were not the solutions you are working with today. You've adapted, you've learned, you've done very well. And this is someone who is very good at his job. But when I was hiring him, part of the things I was looking for is, okay, he had that ownership, he had that self-starter attitude, he had the ability to learn. Because every time, you give people call balls during the interview and you watch how they take it and they soak up the information that they've been garnering through the interview process. So I look at all those things. I don't look at, like your technical skills, because you can really teach those technical skills. Yeah. You can take anything. If you couldn't teach technical skills, I would still be in HR. I should not be in general management. I should not be managing P&Ls and things like that. But I learned those things. But what you can't teach is, you can't teach that ownership. You can't teach, people management and how people relate with people. You can't teach empathy. You can't teach compassion. You can't teach those things that are more soft. So I focus more on the soft skills, because the composition of a team is one that you want all the skill sets to be complementary. So you want someone who is firm on the team. So you look around your team and your managers, okay, you have the firm person. You have the person who is cuddly and motherly. You have the person who is logical and, you have the pessimist on the team too as well. And so, when building teams, people try to hire folks that are like them. But I don't want to have mini Babajides running around the room. I want to have like a balanced team, because there's power in diversity. So I look for those baselines to say, do they have ownership? How do they treat people? Can they learn really quickly? And then would they fit into the current culture that I'm trying to build? Like, once they tick all those boxes, I would hire them.
Okay, so that's group think versus complementary thinking. Really good. So moving on to the next question. A lot of people have misconceptions, and this particular question, please tailor it to say young people or people who are just outside the workforce and who are looking to come in. What misconceptions did you have to shed in your career journey?
That life is fair. Life is not fair.
Life is not fair.
Life is not fair. The workplace is not fair. The company is not a family, it's a team.
Yes.
And so that is something I learned really quickly. And to say, what happens in teams is, in your family, if your younger brother misbehaves, you call family meeting, they will beg you, say, it's your aburo, you need to take care of them, yada, yada, yada. In a team, if the player is not playing well, they will bench you.
Bench you fast.
Very fast. And before you know it, they'll trade you off and replace you with someone else.
Yep.
And so that's the mentality that people need to understand, that it's not a family, it's a team. And so when you understand it's a team, you build great relationships with your colleagues. Like, most of my friends today started off as colleagues. You build good relationships with them, but you won't see them that is my big brother, because that's where complacency starts to enter. You'll be like, I have a personal relationship with him, so he should understand. You were supposed to have a deliverable and you were supposed to deliver on it because someone else is waiting on it. But you want to use your personal relationship to kind of garner favor so that you don't deliver on time. These are where the problems really start. So I talk to my team and I'm like, see, I'm not building a family here, I'm building a team. Which means as long as you are effective in a team, you will get what you deserve. The moment you become ineffective, you'll be out. And it's the same way, because if I become ineffective, the company too, they should even actually be firing me. If they're not firing me, then there is a problem. There's a massive problem. And you see some people, they're in a company and they become part of the aesthetics of the company.
Yes.
So you've stayed in the company for so
Too long.
long,
Yeah.
and you bounce roles, and you don't have anything you're doing anymore. You're just, there, and everybody becomes to you. You become the knowledge box of the company. Like there's a knowledge management system. Let others go and access it. Don't be that knowledge management system. So for me, understand when you get a job, you are going into a team. You're not going into a family. It's the first thing. Then you can lay all the ownership on it and all that. It just helps you show up at the workplace in a different way. And the way people experience you is they start to experience a more authentic you.
Yeah.
Because you know that, like, okay, you have to put your best foot forward for you to actually ensure that you are still a member of the team.
That team.
I agree. I know, just to piggyback on this, I know people that hate words like that, piggyback. But literally, just to piggyback off this, I remember reading something on Twitter recently about a salary conversation. I know that you were quite vocal, but a lot of people, we're talking about 800, K, 800,000 naira for our non-Nigerian listeners not being enough. And, there were two different, schools of thought. A few people were thinking, are you guys joking? This is a lot of money, depending on, you can't just immediately start your career and expect to have that in every industry. And of course, we have, a different school of thought, that was like, no, it's not a lot of money at all. What is your take so that we can just finally kill it? Aniema, you also answer and just give me what your take is on this.
So there's so many dynamics to it. The first thing is we need to understand we live in a poor country. So when you say you're in a poor country, I think the globalization of people sitting in Lagos or even in Akure or one remote place, and you being able to access content, same content that someone who lives in New York, who lives in a very expensive city is able to access, you start to get exposed. But you don't take into consideration the cost of living and the country that you are in. So you hear, and this was something I was talking about, even with how startups are valued. You see a founder doing $5,000 in monthly recurring revenue, gets into YC, hangs out with few buddies of his in YC from, the US, Southeast Asia, Latin America, and hear that, oh, this is how we are valuing our company. Then he takes that same model, comes back to Nigeria and says, oh, I valued at $10 million with $5,000 monthly recurring revenue. And then you start to ask, have you stepped outside to see the markets that you are operating in? There's an income problem in the market. People are not rich. The cost of living is kind of high, but they are not rich. But guess what? If you take average salaries, who you kind of see in the US, maybe take some of their tier 2 cities, and you even pay those salaries in Nigeria, those people will be living like lords.
They are wealthy.
They are wealthy. Exactly. Because why? Even while we say the cost of living is high compared to, other places, when you take certain incomes and you bring them into Nigeria, it transforms you to wealth. So you tell me and you say 800,000 is not a lot. In a country that you need $250,000 to become part of the top 0.1%. 0.01%, not even the top 0.1%, 0.01. And so it just shows you how the income disparity is. When you then now take the 800K we are talking about in question, and you look at Nigerian salary benchmarks, the last average salary was 150,000 naira. The average salary
of graduates is 75,000 naira. The average salary, when you take highest earners, lowest earners, put them in a bucket and you pull it out, is 150,000 naira.
It's huge.
That is almost 4 times. In fact, that is 5 times more than the average salary. And then you see it's not enough. But here's what I think is happening. When people hit certain income levels and they want to come out to say, oh, now I'm arrived, they typically start off this salary is not enough. 800K, when you look at inflation, yes, a lot is happening. But you start to see and you start to have these conversations. And that's why I try to advise a lot of young people to say, when you're young, stop optimizing for comfort. Optimize for value addition. Because when you add value, people pay for value.
Yes.
In the workplace, you trade your value for salary. If the value I perceive that you bring to a company is very high, then of course. And you see people will be comparing and they say, why is it that the CEO is earning this amount of money? I'm like, you know the value he brings.
Yeah.
That value, that quality decision making that he needs to make that ensures 5,000 people are productive. So it's not 3 officers that are talking. It's like one person who directly affects the decision making of 5,000 people who have another, 15, 20,000 people connected to them.
Yeah.
So that guy has to be compensated for that decision making, because if he makes the wrong decision, everybody is out of a job.
Yes.
If he makes the right decision, they can hire more people. And so salary conversations can be very interesting. But to me, what happens is virtually cigarette. When you've earned more money, it's okay for you to come and say, I have a new job and I'm breaking out of poverty. Rather than saying 800K is a small amount, because you've not thought about it that, like, if the average income is 150K and you have so many people who are earning 150, 75,000, and they see you saying 800K is nonsense. That's money they are aspiring to. How do you expect them to feel? Like, what's the motivation? Instead, you're supposed to be a beacon of hope to say, you know what? It's possible to earn this amount. It's possible for you to do that. But hey, everybody will be all right.
I know there's like a Twitter or a social media world and then the real world. You understand? Aniema, do you agree with him?
I agree to a large degree. The what I would just like to chip in for the sake of adding to the conversation, is the fact that inflation is staring people in the faces. Middle class is gradually being eroded. It's a reality we all live with. So, I'll just assume that this person is speaking from that perspective and not just for the sake of making noise. I'm an ardent follower of the exchange rates, as most people are or should be, and you will see how 800,000 naira 1 year ago is no longer 800,000 naira. So so from that perspective, I'll just say, okay, maybe that's what that person is saying.
Yeah, but imagine you can still afford more than the guy who has 150K.
Most definitely.
And many people fall into that 150K bracket. In fact, I love statistics a lot. People argue over sentiment. I argue over statistics. In 2020, the World Bank said only 3.6 million Nigerians can live above $10 a day. Then $10 a day translated to around this 150K we are talking about in disposable income. 3.6 million. In a country of 200 million people. So it automatically just shows you the number of people. And this was 2020. When we start to adjust for reality today, that number was shrunk. We've not adjusted for the people who have, immigrated. We've not, none of these things, job losses, all those things like that. We've not. And so it's just the same thing. And when you look at people who argue, it's the same set of accounts
Yes.
arguing
Yeah.
around the same thing. You are not having new people coming to the fold. It's the same guys who are having the same conversation. Is 800K what it used to be last year? No. But is it still a lot of money today? Yes. Especially when incomes are dwindling, especially when salaries are kind of being cut.
Yeah.
Salaries
When
are being
purchasing
frozen.
power is also reducing.
Purchasing power is reducing. It's actually a lot. And we don't pay attention to how this thing has an effect. My friend was telling me that, snacks industries now, they are turning their highest growth volumes yet. That he doesn't understand what is going on in the market. And I'm like, what people would have done in 2 meals a day has become 1 meal and it's not. So it just shows you what is changing in the environment. But I think people should just extend more grace to this salary conversation.
I think to just round it up, as you said, it's the same sort of people having these conversations. I think that we're at a place where you find that the people who are comfortable actually don't even speak.
Mm-mm.
And I don't mean it's in a horrible way, but you find that the people that are comfortable putting other people down and not giving them a lot to be, to feel motivated about or towards people that, like you said, have just either landed it and they probably didn't think they would. So this is their way of projecting and just showing the world, hey, I've arrived.
Yeah.
And you have not.
No,
So because you find that some people that end all this years and they're quiet. They're quiet. And so when they see this conversation, they then go and say, no, this is not the right approach. But you find that a lot more people are jumping on them.
Which is why I hesitate to share my full opinion on the conversation. I don't know the motivation behind the guy who started this conversation. Twitter is such a mad street. I don't want to get involved in a battle I don't understand.
Yes. So, but for our last question, we'd like to hear your opinion. We've had a few people just send in their questions. So it's agony but in this case, agony uncle style. So I'll just read it out. And what we got was, hi, I accepted a role and I have been there for 1 month. Another company that I really like has finally sent me an offer after a long time of ghosting. What should I do? Do I leave this company for the one I like, even though it is obvious that I may not have been the first or even second choice? Please note that both salaries are in the same range.
So why do they even like the first company in the first place? Maybe, there is some employer
Prestige,
branding
yes.
or prestige around it. There is no major benefit in leaving. You started a place 1 month, you're already getting comfortable with like the work style, you're figuring out and almost getting into a routine. Then you want to, leave and go because the other company sounds a lot cooler and
They're cooler on Twitter.
prestigious. Yes. And you see, I usually tell people, think before you do many things. Like, I've turned down a 66% salary increase before from a more prestigious company.
Wow.
And, if I tell people, it was 66%. And at that point in time, it was a lot of money. It was a substantial, it was the money that you make and you move into a different social class. That 66% was going to give me. But I turned it down. And the reason was I was already getting comfortable and building a relationship where I was. The other company felt right, but something felt off. When you see an offer that feels right and it clicks all your boxes, you won't be asking questions that you feel a certain type of way. So if you had not even started in a company, I would have said, go for the one you're passionate about or you really love. But you started out in the company. There is no significant salary increases in the same range, same grade. You find out that even when you start to spend more time in your current company right now, you start to fall in love with certain things about that company. You start to see the inner workings. You start to see um, how they do. The second angle to it is if you look at both companies and you figure out which one offers you a route to the top faster, pick the one that offers you a route to the top faster.
Growth.
The growth, yeah. So this 66% salary increase was a precursor to like faster growth. So the company that I was in at that point in time was offering me a lot of growth. Where I was going to would have been me being another one in the
Many.
massive crop. And people, I'm sure now many people are saying 66%. How can you? How can you? But it was coming from the fact that before I had taken a pay cut to leave and Access Bank to join Angela. So there's experience of like delaying gratification. So it didn't just wake up one day and I'm like, oh, I'm delaying this gratification. I took a pay cut once to join another company and I saw how I grew significantly. I've spent 15 years experience and I've been a general manager for the last 5 years. So give or take, I would say I spent 9 years in my career to get to general management. If I'd stayed in the bank, it will require 22 years.
Yeah.
And that 22 years, I have to be the top of my game for most of those 22 years to get to that same GM position. And people will be like, oh, GM in the bank and GM at M-Kopa. And I will laugh at you and I'm like, come and be GM at M-Kopa, then you realize. And so these are the things that guide your decision making. But for me, if I were the one and they weren't offering me anything significant, I will stay where I am and continue to build my skill sets in the new place. Especially the fact that they've demonstrated that they've moved quicker. And the other companies, something happened that they ghosted at that point in time. So it might be that they've not even figured who they or what they want in that role. So you just be another person and in 3 months' time, you're out of the job.
Yes. Wow, you heard it here first. Babajide says, stay in the role that you are in. They moved quicker. There's a bit more respect. You're already learning. You're already growing. You're getting comfortable with the role. There's no significant increase. And he even said that delayed gratification has done a lot for his career. So we're just happy that he's been here on People Today to just share from his wealth of knowledge and wisdom. Thank you so much, Babajide, for joining us.
You're most welcome. Thank you for having me.
And Aniema?
Thank you so much, Babajide, for keeping it grounded. Some personal nuggets taking. And yes, we're so glad we got this out of the way.
Yeah.
People has been set in motion. Yay.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed our conversations with Babajide as much as we did. Don't forget to subscribe and listen on your favorite podcast platforms to keep the conversations going. Drop comments and questions on our social media handles. Until next time, bye for now.